Dale Raines wrote a book called The Beatles Trivia Book. Uncover the history of one of the greatest bands to ever walk this earth. And I'm going to read a few 1-star reviews from this Beatles Trivia book.
Is this a generally well-reviewed book?
Yes.
I like to. Okay.
4.6. Gotcha. 555 votes out of 5. So Scott says the seller was fine. Book is stupid. The trivia is not organized in any useful manner, which I found to be a very how would you like
maybe by era?
By era, maybe, or by album, or by member, or something like that.
Right.
So he was upset that the trivia was too random.
Yeah. Well, Peter Curtis says very, very little I didn't already know.
Yeah, that's a fucking badass thing to say.
It is
such a badass thing to say. Like you buy a book and you're like, I already knew all this.
Well, Mystic V says, don't buy this book. The title alone should be enough to stop anyone from buying this book. To say that the Beatles were one of the greatest bands to ever walk this earth shows how little the author knows about the greatest band of all time. There's no one else who's even close. So,
okay, so
he's wrong on the fact of one of.
Using a qualifier for greatest band in the title. That was okay. I mean, some would argue that it's subjective.
No, it's not. It's objective. All the songs, the story behind every Beatles release, 4.7 out of 5 stars, but there's some bad reviews.
Okay.
Doc K says, well, the pictures are nice. The discrepancies in the star ratings one sees for this book can only be accounted for by people who actually know the facts behind the Beatles songs. Parentheses, not the authors, it appears. And those who simply want a nice looking coffee table book or bug squisher. Having hundreds of books in my basement about John, Paul, George, and Ringo, the best thing this book accomplished for me was to give me exercise, walking up and down the stairs to confirm mistakes, while getting me to reread the excellent Mark Lewis own book these authors cite.
I love this guy.
Yeah,
I know he's not actually doing it. You know, he's like making a point, but I love to picture him reading a fact in the book and then going like, wait a second, and walking down into his basement, finding in all his books, like opening it up and then being like, yeah, that's wrong. And then walking back upstairs and then reading another fact and being like, whoa, hang on a second. That's not right. And then going back and doing it again.
He goes, at times the mistakes are pretty funny. On page 178 for Mr. Moonlight, they talk about how at the 1964 recording session, that song was recorded between Please Mr. Postman and Mr. Mustard. If one assumes they meant Mean Mr. Mustard. So
that is pretty funny. I got to admit, that is a pretty funny mistake.
Oh, it is. They left off the word mean.
That's funny. That's pretty funny.
Wow. That they said Abbey Road was recorded in 1964. Wow. Actually, they recorded Leave My Kitten Alone that day. Some of the mistakes are simply poor jobs of reading their sources. On page 24 about I Saw Her Standing There, the citation is that John and Paul sagged off school and wrote it. Well, since John was nearly 22, plus was never much for class anyway, and Paul was 20, neither had seen the inside of a school in some time. Sagging or otherwise, a few of the errors are not really mistakes, but just poor writing. On page 164, they say No Reply was recorded September 30th, 1964, while the caption says it on June 3rd, 1964. See, these guys are so long-winded. I flub.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm not even putting that on you. It's like getting through this fucking mess of words.
It's fucking crazy to like be an editor for the book after it's already been released.
It really is. And listen, I was expecting him to have some better examples. I mean, none of this stuff. Like,
no,
you know what
it's,
I mean?
It's like fact checking in the Amazon review is fucking weird.
Very weird.
An honest man says errors on every page. I've read over 20 books about the Beatles. This book has.
Oh, buddy, I know someone who's read 100.
No primary research. He couldn't even get the facts correct as a secondary source. No new photos except for irrelevant photos of other bands. Yeah, you probably won't put that in there.
Well, by the way, I'm not buying this book based on the reviews.
It's wrong. There's too much wrong stuff.
Well, yeah, that seems to me like the Beatles. Like I would actually use these negative reviews and say, nah, I'm not going to buy this book.
I would too. And if I were the Beatles, a couple of them are still going. Ringo and Paul are still around. I would maybe consider legal action against the publisher, or maybe reissue it with the corrections in there.
Yes, yeah.